The Galactic Trade Station orbited the neutral moon of Kepler 442c, a massive structure that served as the primary meeting point for dozens of alien species. Within its gleaming corridors, representatives from across the galaxy conducted business, formed alliances, and shared technology. The humans had only recently been granted membership to the Galactic Council, much to the amusement of the older, more established civilizations. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the human diplomatic vessel Endeavour, watching the station grow larger through the reinforced viewport. Her uniform bore the simple insignia of Earth's Colonial Defense Force, an organization that most aliens considered laughably primitive. The irony wasn't lost on her that humanity's greatest strength was also what made them the subject of ridicule throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians had been the first to openly mock human military capabilities during the initial contact protocols 6 months ago. Their ambassador, a towering creature with metallic skin and multiple arms, had literally fallen over laughing when presented with standard human weaponry. Projectile weapons, they called them, as if the very concept was absurd. Energy-based warfare had been the galactic standard for over 10,000 years. Today's meeting was crucial. The human colonies on the outer rim were under threat from the hegemony, a militant alliance of species that viewed humanity as an easy target for expansion. The Galactic Council had agreed to review Earth's request for protection. But the preliminary discussions had not gone well. Most species saw humans as technologically inferior beings who brought nothing of value to the galactic community. Chen adjusted her sidearm, a simple projectile pistol that had drawn snickers from every alien she'd encountered. The weapon used chemical propulsion to fire small metal projectiles at high velocity. To the aliens, it was like watching primitives throw rocks. Their energy weapons could disintegrate matter at the molecular level, create force shields, and strike targets from impossible distances. What could humans possibly offer with their crude ballistic technology? The shuttle bay of the trade station was massive, designed to accommodate vessels from hundreds of different species. The human shuttle looked particularly small next to the sleek, organic curves of Zephyrian ships and the crystalline structures of the Andromedan fleet. As Chen disembarked with her small diplomatic team, she could hear the familiar sounds of alien laughter echoing through the chamber. Ambassador Krex of the hegemony was already holding court near the main conference entrance, his six-legged form surrounded by a crowd of interested aliens. His species, the Vorthak, were natural predators who had built their civilization on conquest and domination. Their technology was among the most advanced in the galaxy, and their military had never known defeat. The humans believe their primitive projectile weapons will protect them, Krex was saying, his translated voice carrying clearly across the bay. I have seen their demonstrations. They fire small pieces of metal at barely supersonic speeds. Our personal shields can deflect such attacks without any energy expenditure whatsoever. A ripple of amused chittering came from the assembled crowd. The Andromedans, with their crystalline bodies that could absorb and redirect energy, found the concept particularly amusing. The stellar collective representatives, beings of pure energy who could phase through solid matter at will, seemed barely able to contain their mirth. Chen felt her jaw tighten, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. This was exactly what she had expected. The same reaction happened every time humans tried to demonstrate their military capabilities. Their weapons were seen as quaint relics, museum pieces from a bygone era of galactic development. What the aliens didn't understand was that human warfare had evolved along entirely different lines than the rest of the galaxy. While other species had focused on ever more exotic energy-based weapons, humans had perfected the art of kinetic warfare. They had learned to place projectiles with microscopic precision, to calculate trajectories that accounted for planetary rotation, atmospheric interference, and gravitational fluctuations across vast distances. The conference chamber was a marvel of alien engineering. with environmental controls that could simultaneously support dozens of different atmospheric requirements. Gravity generators created pockets of varying gravitational fields to accommodate species from different planetary environments. The central holographic display showed the current territorial disputes along the outer rim, with human colonies clearly marked in vulnerable positions. Council Speaker Thane, an ancient Zephyrian who had overseen galactic affairs for over 2 centuries, called the session to order. His mechanical voice carried the weight of absolute authority as he addressed the assembly. "We are here to discuss the human request for protection against hegemony expansion," he announced. "Ambassador Krex has filed formal territorial claims on 17 human colonial worlds, citing the doctrine of superior force. The doctrine of superior force was an ancient galactic law that allowed militarily superior civilizations to claim territory from weaker species, provided they could demonstrate overwhelming tactical advantage. It was considered a civilized alternative to actual warfare, though the results were often the same for the losing side." Ambassador Harrison, Earth's senior representative, stood to address the council. He was a veteran diplomat who had spent years trying to build relationships with alien species, despite their obvious disdain for human capabilities. "Honorable Council," Harrison began, "humanity respectfully contests these territorial claims. Our colonies are well defended and prepared to resist any aggression." The translation systems carried his words throughout the chamber, but the response was immediate and predictable. Laughter erupted from multiple species, with the Vorthak delegation making particularly dismissive gestures with their multiple appendages. Ambassador Krex rose from his position, his predatory form towering over the human delegation. "The humans speak of defense, yet their weapons cannot even penetrate our basic personal shielding. Their so-called military uses chemical explosions to propel metal fragments. It is like watching children play with toys." More laughter filled the chamber. Chen watched the display with growing frustration, knowing that every dismissive gesture and mocking comment was being recorded and transmitted back to Earth. Humanity's reputation in galactic affairs was already precarious, and this public humiliation would make future negotiations even more difficult. "Perhaps," suggested Speaker Thane, "the humans would consent to a demonstration. Let us see these primitive weapons in action against proper galactic technology." The suggestion was greeted with enthusiastic approval from the assembly. Chen could see the trap closing around them. Any demonstration would only further prove human inferiority, but refusing would be seen as an admission of weakness. Harrison looked toward Chen, seeking guidance. As the military representative, this decision fell within her purview. She knew that conventional human weapons would indeed be ineffective against energy shields and advanced alien materials. But she also knew something that the aliens didn't. Human military doctrine had evolved far beyond simple ballistic weapons. "Very well," Chen said, standing to address the council. "We accept the challenge. However, I request that the demonstration be conducted under realistic combat conditions, not in a controlled laboratory environment." This request caused some surprise among the alien delegates. Most weapons demonstrations were carefully staged affairs with predetermined targets and controlled variables. Chen's request suggested a level of confidence that seemed impossible given human technological limitations. Krex's multiple eyes focused on Chen with predatory interest. "You wish to face our military technology in actual combat conditions? This seems unwise for such a primitive species." "Nevertheless," Chen replied calmly, "that is our condition for the demonstration. We believe context is important when evaluating military effectiveness." The council chamber buzzed with excited conversation as the implications of this challenge became clear. If the humans were truly confident enough to face advanced alien military technology under combat conditions, perhaps there was more to their capabilities than initially apparent. Or perhaps they were simply too naive to understand the magnitude of their disadvantage. Speaker Thane consulted with the other council members before responding. Very well. The demonstration will be conducted on the combat range of Station Nexus 7, under full battlefield conditions. Both sides will be permitted to use their standard military equipment and tactics. Chen nodded, though inwardly she felt a familiar mixture of anxiety and anticipation. This would be humanity's one chance to prove their worth to the galactic community. Success could secure protection for the outer colonies and establish Earth as a legitimate military power. Failure would likely result in immediate territorial concessions and possible enslavement under the doctrine of superior force. As the council session concluded and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Chen remained behind to coordinate with her team. The demonstration was scheduled for the following day, giving them less than 24 hours to prepare. Most of the alien species seemed to view this as a mere formality, a brief entertainment before formally recognizing hegemony territorial claims. But Chen knew something they didn't. Hidden aboard the human diplomatic vessel was equipment that no alien had ever seen in action. Weapons that represented the absolute pinnacle of human military engineering, developed in secret over decades of preparation for exactly this kind of encounter. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes the most primitive concepts, when perfected to an extraordinary degree, could be far more dangerous than the most advanced technology. Station Nexus 7 hung in the void like a metallic spider, its combat ranges extending outward in all directions. The facility had been built specifically for military demonstrations and training exercises, featuring environments that could simulate any planetary conditions found throughout the galaxy. Today, it would host what many aliens considered to be a final confirmation of human military inadequacy. The range selected for the demonstration spanned 50 square kilometers of artificial terrain, complete with varied topography, atmospheric processors, and holographic targeting systems. Multiple observation platforms surrounded the area, allowing council members and invited guests to watch the proceedings from a safe distance. Chen stood in the human preparation area, watching her team conduct final equipment checks. The aliens had been generous in their assumptions about human requirements, providing standard atmospheric conditions and gravity comparable to Earth normal. What they didn't realize was that these conditions gave humans a distinct advantage that no other species possessed. Sergeant Marcus Webb was methodically assembling his rifle, a weapon that looked deceptively similar to the projectile firearms that had drawn so much alien laughter. However, this particular device represented decades of advancement in human ballistic technology. Every component had been crafted to microscopic tolerances, utilizing materials and manufacturing techniques that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. Range is set for maximum distance, Webb reported, his voice carrying the calm professionalism that had made him one of Earth's most decorated marksmen. 53 kilometers with variable atmospheric density. Wind patterns are unpredictable due to the artificial environment systems. The conditions would have made accurate shooting impossible for conventional human weapons, which was precisely why the aliens had selected them. Energy-based weapons weren't affected by atmospheric interference or gravitational variations. A plasma bolt would maintain its trajectory regardless of environmental factors, while laser beams traveled at light speed and couldn't be deflected by wind patterns. Chen nodded, understanding the tactical situation perfectly. The aliens were about to demonstrate their military superiority using their most advanced combat systems. Ambassador Krex himself would be operating a hegemony battlesuit, a technological marvel that combined personal shielding, environmental adaptation, and multiple integrated weapon systems. "Captain," Webb said quietly, "are we really going to attempt this? The target parameters they've set are beyond anything we've ever tried under combat conditions." Chen looked through the observation window at the massive combat range. In the distance, barely visible even with enhanced optics, the hegemony team was setting up their demonstration area. Krex's battlesuit gleamed in the artificial sunlight, its advanced systems already scanning for potential threats. "Marcus," she said, "how many impossible shots have you made in your career?" Webb considered the question seriously. As humanity's premier long-range specialist, he had earned his reputation through a series of increasingly difficult challenges. Shots that had seemed impossible at the time, but which had become routine through constant training and refinement of technique. "More than I can count," he admitted. "But this is different. We're not just shooting at a target. We're trying to penetrate technology that's supposedly beyond our capability to affect." Chen understood his concern. But she also knew something about human nature that the aliens had failed to recognize. When faced with supposedly impossible challenges, humans had a tendency to find ways to make the impossible routine. It was perhaps their species' greatest strength and most dangerous characteristic. The demonstration began with the hegemony team showcasing their capabilities. From the observation platforms, the assembled alien dignitaries watched as Krex's battlesuit demonstrated its various systems. Personal energy shields deflected simulated attacks from multiple directions. Integrated weapon systems destroyed targets at extreme range with pinpoint accuracy. Environmental adaptation allowed the suit to operate in conditions that would be instantly lethal to unprotected beings. As you can see, Krex's translated voice carried across the observation platforms. Hegemony military technology represents the pinnacle of galactic engineering. Our battlesuits are immune to primitive projectile weapons and can engage multiple targets simultaneously across vast distances. The demonstration was undeniably impressive. The battlesuit moved with fluid grace despite its massive size, its integrated systems working in perfect harmony to create a nearly invincible combat platform. Energy weapons tracked and destroyed targets with mechanical precision, while defensive systems deflected incoming fire without any apparent energy expenditure. When the hegemony demonstration concluded, Speaker Thane addressed the human team. "Captain Chen, you may now demonstrate your species' military capabilities. Please note that Ambassador Krex has volunteered to serve as a target, confident that his battlesuit's defensive systems will render your weapons ineffective." This announcement caused a stir among the alien observers. The idea that a senior hegemony ambassador would willingly expose himself to enemy fire demonstrated supreme confidence in their technological superiority. It was also a calculated insult, suggesting that human weapons posed no threat whatsoever. Chen activated her communication system to address the assembled aliens. "Members of the Galactic Council, humanity appreciates this opportunity to demonstrate our military capabilities. Our approach to warfare may seem primitive by galactic standards, but we believe effectiveness should be measured by results, not by technological sophistication." She gestured to Webb, who had positioned himself at the extreme range limit of the combat area. His rifle was mounted on a specialized stabilization system that compensated for the artificial gravity fluctuations inherent in space-based facilities. Multiple sensors fed environmental data to a targeting computer that calculated trajectory adjustments in real time. "Sergeant Webb will attempt to engage the hegemony battlesuit from maximum range using standard human ballistic technology," Chen announced. "The distance is approximately 53 kilometers, with atmospheric interference and variable environmental conditions." Laughter erupted from multiple observation platforms. The Andromedans were particularly amused, their crystalline forms pulsing with colors that indicated extreme mirth. Several Zephyrian delegates made dismissive gestures, clearly considering this demonstration to be a waste of time. Ambassador Krex positioned himself in the center of the target area, his battlesuit systems displaying confidence readings that were visible to all observers. The suit's energy shields created a shimmering barrier around his massive form, while integrated sensors scanned for incoming threats. "I am prepared," Krex announced. Let the humans demonstrate the futility of their primitive weapons. Webb began his final preparations with methodical precision. The targeting system analyzed atmospheric conditions, gravitational variations, and the movement patterns of Krex's battlesuit. Complex calculations accounted for the rotation of the space station, the artificial gravity generators, and the unpredictable air currents created by the environmental systems. What the aliens didn't understand was that human ballistic technology had evolved far beyond simple chemical propulsion. Webb's rifle utilized electromagnetic acceleration to achieve velocities that approached significant fractions of light speed. The projectile itself was a marvel of human engineering, constructed from materials that remained stable under extreme acceleration while maintaining perfect aerodynamic properties. Most importantly, the projectile had been designed specifically to defeat energy-based defensive systems. While alien shields could deflect energy weapons by redirecting their force, they struggled to cope with solid matter traveling at extreme velocities. The physics involved were fundamentally different from anything the galactic military establishment had encountered. Webb's breathing slowed as he entered the meditative state that all expert marksmen knew. The rifle's systems provided targeting data, but the final shot would depend on human intuition, experience, and the indefinable skill that separated good shooters from legendary ones. The observation platforms fell silent as Webb took aim. Even the aliens seemed to sense that something significant was about to happen, though they remained confident in their technological superiority. 53 kilometers was an impossible distance for ballistic weapons, especially under these environmental conditions. Chen watched through her own optics as Webb made final adjustments to his position. She could see Krex in the distance, his battlesuit's shields glowing with contained energy. The hegemony ambassador was completely motionless, supremely confident that no human weapon could penetrate his defenses. The rifle's electromagnetic systems charged with a barely audible hum. Webb's finger tightened on the trigger as multiple targeting systems confirmed optimal firing conditions. Environmental sensors detected a brief lull in atmospheric interference, creating a window of opportunity that would last only seconds. Webb fired. The projectile left the rifle's barrel traveling at nearly 8% of light speed, its passage through the artificial atmosphere creating a visible distortion in the air. Advanced alien sensors detected the incoming projectile, but their readings seemed impossible. No ballistic weapon should be capable of achieving such velocities. Krex's battlesuit responded automatically. Energy shields intensifying to maximum power as defensive systems attempted to track the incoming threat. But the projectile's velocity exceeded the suit's computational capabilities, arriving before defensive systems could properly respond. The impact occurred in complete silence, the projectile's kinetic energy instantly overwhelming the battlesuit's energy shields. The barriers that had seemed impenetrable simply ceased to exist, their contained energy dissipating harmlessly into the surrounding atmosphere. Ambassador Krex stood motionless for several seconds, his multiple eyes staring down at his chest, where a perfectly circular hole had appeared in his supposedly impenetrable armor. The projectile had passed completely through the battlesuit, exiting through the rear plating without slowing appreciably. The silence on the observation platforms was deafening. Ambassador Krex remained standing for what seemed like an eternity, his massive form frozen in disbelief. The hole through his battlesuit was perfectly round, its edges still glowing from the heat generated by the projectile's passage. His multiple eyes stared downward, unable to process what had just occurred. Then, with a grinding sound of damaged systems, the battlesuit collapsed to its knees. Emergency medical systems activated automatically, flooding Krex's compartment with healing foam and life support chemicals. The ambassador would live, but only because Webb had deliberately aimed to miss vital organs. The shot had been intended as a demonstration, not an execution. The observation platforms erupted in chaos. Alien delegates who had been laughing moments before now stood in stunned silence, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of disbelief. The Andromedans' crystalline bodies flickered rapidly between colors, indicating severe emotional distress. The Zephyrians made rapid clicking sounds with their mechanical appendages, a sign of extreme agitation. Speaker Thane was the first to regain his composure. His ancient voice carried clearly across the communication systems as he addressed the human team. How is this possible? Our sensors detected projectile velocities that should be impossible for ballistic technology. Chen stepped forward, maintaining her diplomatic demeanor despite the triumph she felt. Honorable Speaker, humanity has spent centuries perfecting the art of kinetic warfare. While other species developed energy-based weapons, we focused on delivering solid projectiles with unprecedented accuracy and velocity. She gestured toward Webb, who was already beginning to disassemble his rifle with practiced efficiency. Sergeant Webb's weapon utilizes electromagnetic acceleration to achieve projectile speeds approaching 8% of light velocity. At such speeds, kinetic energy becomes sufficient to overwhelm most energy-based defensive systems. The explanation caused another wave of agitated discussion among the alien delegates. The concept was theoretically simple, but the engineering requirements were staggering. Achieving such velocities required precision manufacturing, advanced materials science, and targeting systems that could calculate trajectories across impossible distances. Dr. Vexhai of the Andromedan Scientific Collective raised one of his crystalline appendages. Even if such velocities are achievable, the atmospheric interference over 53 kilometers should make accurate targeting impossible. Our calculations show that projectile deviation would exceed target dimensions by several orders of magnitude. Webb looked up from his equipment, a slight smile playing across his weathered features. Doctor, with respect, your calculations assume that atmospheric interference affects the projectile throughout its entire flight path. Our rounds spend most of their trajectory in near-vacuum conditions above the atmospheric density layer. The implications of this statement sent another shock through the alien observers. The humans weren't simply firing projectiles in a straight line. They were calculating ballistic trajectories that took into account atmospheric layers, gravitational variations, and the rotation of the space station itself. It was mathematical warfare on a scale that most species had never conceived. Ambassador Harrison seized the opportunity to address the council while the aliens were still processing what they had witnessed. Esteemed colleagues, this demonstration illustrates an important principle that humanity has learned through long experience. Technological sophistication is not always equivalent to military effectiveness. Sometimes the simplest solutions, when perfected to an extraordinary degree, prove superior to more complex alternatives. Krex was being evacuated from the combat range, his damaged battlesuit supported by emergency medical drones. The sight of the supposedly invincible hegemony technology being carried away like broken machinery had a profound psychological impact on the assembled delegates. Commander Zarth of the Stellar Collective, a being of pure energy who rarely participated in physical discussions, materialized near the human delegation. His translated voice carried undertones of genuine curiosity rather than the dismissive arrogance that had characterized previous alien interactions. Captain Chen, he said, this weapon represents a fundamental paradigm shift in galactic military thinking. Energy-based weapons have dominated warfare for millennia because they seem to represent the logical evolution of combat technology. Your species has demonstrated that there are alternative paths to military effectiveness. Chen nodded respectfully. Commander, humanity has always believed that the best solution to any problem is rarely the most obvious one. While other species perfected energy manipulation, we continued developing kinetic systems because we understood their unique advantages. What she didn't mention was that human military doctrine had evolved specifically to counter energy-based warfare. Decades of preparation had gone into developing weapons and tactics that could defeat technologically superior opponents. The demonstration had shown only a fraction of humanity's true capabilities. The council chamber was hastily reconvened as delegates struggled to process the implications of what they had witnessed. The hegemony's territorial claims now seemed far less certain, given that their supposedly invincible military technology had been defeated by a single human marksman. Speaker Thane called for order as the session resumed. In light of recent events, the Council must reconsider the doctrine of superior force as it applies to the human territorial dispute. The demonstration has clearly shown that hegemony military superiority cannot be taken for granted. Ambassador Krex's deputy, a smaller Vorthak named Grix, stood to address the council. His translated voice carried the strain of someone whose worldview had just been fundamentally challenged. The hegemony protests this demonstration as unrepresentative of actual combat conditions. A single successful shot against an unprepared target proves nothing about sustained military capability. Chen had been expecting this response. No military organization would easily accept that their technological advantages had been negated by supposedly primitive weapons. Deputy Grix raises a valid concern. Perhaps we should conduct a more comprehensive demonstration under full combat conditions? The suggestion caused visible alarm among several alien delegates. If a single human marksman could penetrate hegemony defenses from extreme range, what might a full human military unit accomplish under actual combat conditions? Dr. Keth of the Zephyrian Engineering Corps requested permission to examine Webb's weapon. The theoretical implications of this technology require immediate analysis. If humans have indeed achieved such electromagnetic acceleration capabilities, it represents a breakthrough in applied physics that affects far more than military applications. Webb looked to Chen, who nodded her approval. The rifle's basic principles weren't particularly secret, and demonstrating human technological capabilities might prove useful in future negotiations. As Dr. Keth began his examination, his mechanical appendages moved with increasing excitement. The precision manufacturing required for these components exceeds galactic standards by significant margins. The electromagnetic coils show tolerances measured in subatomic increments. How did your species achieve such precision without energy-based manufacturing tools? Doctor, Webb replied, humans learned to achieve precision through mechanical means long before we developed advanced energy systems. When your species was perfecting plasma manipulation, ours was learning to create perfect mechanical tolerances using nothing but controlled pressure and heat. The examination revealed layer after layer of sophisticated engineering that challenged alien assumptions about technological development. The rifle represented not just advanced ballistic technology, but a completely different approach to manufacturing and materials science. As the council session continued, the balance of power in the galaxy had subtly but permanently shifted. The humans were no longer seen as primitive beings with crude weapons. They had become a military unknown, a species whose capabilities couldn't be easily categorized or dismissed. Speaker Thane made the formal announcement that would reshape galactic politics. The Galactic Council recognizes that human military technology represents a legitimate deterrent force. The hegemony territorial claims are hereby suspended pending further evaluation of military capabilities. But the real victory came when Commander Zarth made an unexpected proposal. The Stellar Collective formally requests establishment of a military technology exchange program with humanity. We believe both species could benefit from sharing knowledge and techniques. Chen felt a surge of satisfaction as similar requests came from other alien delegations. Humanity had not only avoided territorial concessions, but had established themselves as a valuable military ally. The laughter that had echoed through the station corridors had been replaced by respectful requests for cooperation. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Chen reflected on the day's events. A single shot from a human rifle had accomplished what decades of diplomacy could not. Sometimes the most powerful statement was made not with words, but with the precise application of kinetic energy across impossible distances. The aliens had learned that there was more than one path to military effectiveness, and that sometimes the most dangerous opponents were those who perfected simple concepts to extraordinary levels. Humanity's reputation in galactic affairs would never be the same, and the outer colonies would remain under Earth's protection. In the cargo bay of the human vessel, Webb carefully stored his rifle alongside a dozen similar weapons that the aliens had never seen. The demonstration had used only a fraction of humanity's ballistic capabilities, and Chen intended to keep their remaining advantages secret for future negotiations. After all, the galaxy had only just begun to understand what humans could accomplish when they stopped being underestimated.